to think about.
All right. Does anybody have any specific they want to talk about?
I think it was your turn this week.
Or was it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think you had something that hinged on what we spoke about 2 weeks
You
ago.
guys are.
I definitely remember it was his term.
You guys are like parents that leave the newborn at the firehouse door.
Hey, it's legal.
Let the firehouse take care of it.
Works for me.
I want to make sure I tell you guys the same thing I tell the guys in jail when I go see them. I am here for you. And wherever you want to go and whatever you need, I'm happy to try to accommodate that.
And we appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
Appreciate being
Well,
compared to jail prisoners.
You haven't led us astray yet.
All right. Well, all right. I'll bring up something that came up last night in a meeting. A very honest question, I thought, sincerely asked. And this young woman said, well, the story, our Tuesday night group, I don't know how many of you know the story of Brianna from Brianna's Hope. A young woman from Jay County. She was addicted, went missing for 10 weeks, and they found her dismembered body. I think in September of 2014. Well, going through her effects, they also found a journal that included a prayer. And as part of the prayer, she said, Lord, I surrender to you. Do with me as you see fit. The question that was asked was, if we're sincere about that, why would God allow something so terrible to happen? Everybody with me?
Mm-hmm.
She prayed, God, I surrender to you. Do with me as you see fit. And then she was murdered, and they still haven't found the killer. Not just murder, but like I said, dismembered. Why, if you're praying to God and surrendering to Him, would He allow something that bad to happen?
Good question.
So, go.
You fast forward to today.
What's that?
Fast forward to today.
All right. I'll sit back and I'll let you guys answer this.
And that's what I'm saying. My answer is, look where her death was so harsh.
Exactly.
But he looks at the whole picture. God sees the whole picture of it all. And look what it has done. And as a statement that her death has made and brought so many people around, and fast forward to where it is today and what it's doing for an outreach and doing for everybody else.
Okay, so
That's
your position is something bad had to happen, but eventually God turned it into something good,
yes.
right?
Yeah, because he didn't say that bad things wouldn't happen. That was never, God never said that, you know. He just said he would be with us through everything.
Does anybody share her confusion just in raising the question? Does anybody share that same attitude?
I do.
I've given myself to you, I've surrendered to you, and now you're going to let this happen?
Yes. I believe wholeheartedly in that, because otherwise it's depressing and sad. And I mean, how many other situations have you seen in history where something bad happened to somebody, but all the good things that came out of that one incident?
That's a great way of looking at it. If you happen not to be the person the bad things happening to.
Yeah.
So who here hasn't had bad things happen to him
Yeah.
and still alive?
Jesus spoke the same prayer, more or less, and look what happened to him.
I mean,
That is the ultimate example. That is the
Yeah.
ultimate model of someone surrendering to God's will and saying, Lord, I surrender my life. You do with me as you will. What did Jesus pray in the garden?
Take this cup from me.
Yeah.
take it from me.
But
God,
That will be done.
not as I will, but as you will.
Yeah.
So that's saying the same thing. So when you say that, everybody can kind of see that all right, God's trying to accomplish something bigger and better, right?
Mhm.
Okay, so if a doctor came to you and said, you know, your 2-year-old's going to die, but we're going to be able to develop from that a vaccine or a serum that's going to help a lot of people, you would be okay with that.
At that point in time, probably not.
Especially if it was my child. Or
You
grandchild.
know, that,
Yeah, I guess the point I'm getting to here is I think we all agree on what's the word I'm looking for? On an intellectual level, we want God's will to be done.
yes, we do.
But it's a lot harder when the rubber hits the road
Mhm.
and it's happening to us.
Yeah.
I'm going to share something with you. From an early age, I had health issues, and was told I would never get pregnant. And did 5 times. Lost 5 children. It was very difficult for me. They did not have the science so that I could hold on to any of my children. And I was able to see later on things that helped my own sisters, my youngest sisters. So I look at it, even though I struggled, and it was so difficult for me to go through each and every loss, because I lost a little bit of myself each time along the way. I was able to see somebody else through science and technology able to finally have children.
How far along did you get with most of them?
I got up as far as 4 months.
Okay, so in a way, that is kind of what we're talking about. In a sense.
So I had to decide, is it worth it? You know, I have to tell myself today, yes, it was worth it. Is it hard sometimes to see those who don't take care of children and just throw them away? But I look at it, and those who have had abortions and stuff, and it's so difficult for me. But I look at it and I say, if I can carry that load, that they can, because then I look at it and I say, okay, God, what else did you have in mind for me? What was your plan? What the heck did I go through all this for? And it was like, I spent this past Saturday going to a football game with my nephew, my great nephew in the 1st grade. And then I went back to school shopping. And I have wonderful relationships with some of my nieces and my nephews that I don't think I would have ever had it been my own children been here. So maybe God said, you know what? I have a better plan for you, because I want you out there doing some of these other things and being there for other children in another capacity. And that's what I look at. And I'm going like, okay, I'll take that and I'll say thank you. And that's what you have to do sometimes. It's hard, but I do it. And I'm just, my niece is just like, the kids says that they were kind of like grandma with them. And it's enough. I take it and I say it's enough.
That's a very mature way of looking at it, a very mature faith, I think.
It is at 40, it's at 63, but at 23.
Right. That's the issue.
At 23.
We have the benefit of hindsight. So,
Yes, we do.
go to Isaiah 45, verse 9. Well, actually, let's try Isaiah 29:16. We'll start there. 29:16. They're essentially the same verse. When somebody gets there.
16, right?
29:16. Somebody want to read that?
You turn things upside down. Shall the potter be regarded as the clay? Shall the thing made say it's the maker? He did not make me. Or the thing formed say of the one who was formed. He has no understanding.
What's that another way of saying, do you think? You turn things upside down as if the potter were thought to be like the clay. Shall what is formed say to him who formed it, he did not make me? Can the pot say to the potter, he knows nothing? That's just another way of saying what? God is God, and we are not. Who's the pot and who's the clay here?
We're the clay, supposedly.
We're the clay. Who's the potter?
That would be
God.
God. It's very hard for us to get to that position where we can understand that God created us, our lives are His, and He can do with them as He wills. And as the pot, we really don't have a right or the authority to say to the potter, why are you doing it?
Yeah, I want my handle over there.
Yeah.
Don't ask why.
It's kind of like we are with children.
We all what?
We're with children. A lot of times you tell them one thing, they do just the opposite.
Well, it's somewhat reminiscent of the conversation God has with Job at the end of the book of Job, where He basically tells him, look, Job, you don't know what you're talking about. I'm God and you're not. And this is the way it is. You may not like it. You may not understand it.
Yep.
But you accept it because I'm God.
Yeah.
And that can be very, very, very difficult to get through.
Yeah.
Because I really like what it says here in verse 16. You turn things upside down. It offends our notion of fairness and justice. Because if I'm good and I'm a Christian and I come to faith, then I should be rewarded by God for that. See, that's the way our thinking works. That's the way we understand the world. If you do the right things, you will be rewarded. If you make good choices, you're rewarded. If you make bad choices.
But not on earth. That's just, it's not on earth. It's heaven.
We're looking at everything through rose-colored glasses also then.
Well, we're looking at everything from a human perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the problem.
That this is my understanding. This is what I think the way things should be. That turns things upside down.
I begin to think, and sometimes we just don't want to think. Just
God comes to us and reminds us that he's still God and he's still in charge.
yes, he is.
Let me very quickly look up another verse here, and we'll go to it. It kind of reminds us of this same thing. It is Romans 9:15.
What?
Romans 9:15. And I'd really like someone to explain this verse to me.
I will have mercy on whom I will have mercy. I will have compassion. That's interesting.
Romans. Okay, I got the Romans. I forgot the rest.
15 and 15.
And it is a quotation, by the way. It is a restatement of Exodus 33:19. Okay.
Yes, it is. I see that.
Really, if you have to start with 14.
Yeah, I guess. Yes.
What then shall we say? Is God unjust? Not at all. For he says to Moses, I will have mercy on whom I have mercy, and I will have compassion on whom I have compassion.
Okay. And if we go back to Exodus 33:19, it says, well, actually starting at 18, then Moses said, now show me your glory. And the Lord said, I will cause all my goodness to pass in front of you, and I will proclaim my name, the Lord, in your presence. I will have mercy on whom I will have mercy, and I will have compassion on whom I will have compassion. But he said, you cannot see my face, for no one may see me. What in the world is God saying?
Basically, it's up to me, and you can't tell me what to do.
Good point. I will be gracious and will show mercy on whom I will. Yeah, that's a good point right there.
But we're told one way of reading this, perhaps, is to look at it and think, well, wait a minute. I thought if you came to Jesus, God is going to be merciful. Sounds like here it's kind of arbitrary.
I think we discussed this a long time ago, right after you came in when we were talking about this in Bible study. Prayer isn't always so that we can get what we want. Sometimes prayer is to make us understand why we don't get it and have a relationship with God.
Okay. I like that. That sounds like me.
Yeah. Yes. That was practically word for word what you said.
You're not writing down the stuff I say, are you? I will have mercy on whom I have mercy. I will have compassion on whom I have compassion. I think Susan is right in the sense that that's just another way of saying I'm God. And you can't understand
Notice what this says.
who I am. Read your footnote.
Okay, it says, let's see, go back up to. Because we are finite and morally imperfect, we cannot exist and see God as he is.
Okay.
To see God's back means we can only see where God has passed by. We can only know him by what he does and how he acts. We cannot comprehend God as he really is apart from Jesus Christ.
flip back, well, depending on where you are, go to Matthew 5:45, the second half of the verse.
5:45.
5:45. And this may offend some people's sense of justice.
And to rise on the evil and on the good, and it's real, the just and on the unjust. Okay.
Just the second half of the verse, not the first one.
Oh, okay.
He causes his sun to rise on the evil and the good, and sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous.
Okay. Now, why might some people have difficulty with that?
Because
They think they're righteous.
They think if I'm doing what God wants, then
Right.
everything should be perfect.
Yeah.
He caused the sun to rise on the good and the
And they
rain to
still-
fall on the unrighteous. But this is just another way of saying what we've been really saying here, is that God's got a system of fairness and justice. It's not the same as ours. We can't understand it. We can't comprehend him. All we can do is accept it. And accept it because he is God. How many times when you were a parent or a grandparent did a child exhaust your patience and finally you just told them, because I said
I
so?
said so.
No.
I never heard that in my life.
Because I said so. And basically the
I had to
child,
fight.
I thought my
Child
parents
doesn't have-
invented that sentence.
child doesn't have to like it, child doesn't have to understand it, but the child does have to accept it.
Yep, I thought they carved that one. Yeah.
And in many ways, that's the way it is with God.
Yeah, because I said so. Yeah.
And I don't think God is acting capriciously or cavalierly. I don't think he's acting certainly out of his character. But if he wants to accomplish something by walking us through suffering or difficulty, we eventually have to accept that. Anybody remember the, what is it, the 5 stages of grief?
Oh gosh, I had some books on that.
What, the first is denial, then anger, then bargaining. Can't remember the 4th, but what's always the 5th?
Acceptance.
Acceptance. Eventually, you have to come to accept the reality. And what God is saying is it's a lot easier on all of us if we can just go right to
To the last.
acceptance rather than the other stages, which is hard to do. But again, Jesus is our model for all. Not as I will, but as you will.
Yeah.
So again, every Sunday we pray the Lord's Prayer, which says, "Thy will be done." Do we truly mean that?
Mhm. We should if we're going to say it.
Do we truly mean that if it's going to involve pain and suffering and difficulty for us?
Yes, otherwise you're just giving lip service.
Well,
Because
you might as well mean it, because it's gonna happen, it's gonna happen anyway, so.
Because I
Well,
said so.
That's a,
now we're back into predestination and
Hmm.
all
Well,
that.
not exactly, but, you know, what God has planned, he has planned, and he's gonna execute, and if that involves you, then
Okay,
you might well accept it because that's what's going to happen.
okay. Let's go to Acts chapter 9 real quick. That's a good point.
Acts chapter.
Chapter 9. What?
All right, verse 1.
Verse 1.
Meanwhile, Saul was still breathing out murderous threats against the Lord's disciples. He went to the high priest and asked him for letters to the synagogues in Damascus, so that if he found any there who belonged to the way, to the Christians, whether men or women, he might take them as prisoners to Jerusalem. As he neared Damascus on his journey, suddenly a light from heaven flashed around him. He fell to the ground and heard a voice say to him, "Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me?" "Who are you, Lord?" Saul asked. "I am Jesus, whom you are persecuting," he replied. "Now get up and go into the city, and you will be told what you must do." All right, now at this point, does Saul/Paul still have free will?
Yes.
Could he have said, "Yeah, Jesus, thanks, but no thanks"?
He has free will all the way along. He had free will all the way along. Even when he was blind, he could have said no.
Okay. But it was apparently God's will that Paul be used for this purpose Jesus was calling him to.
So do you think that if he'd have said, no, I want to stay blind and I'm not going to follow you and I'm going to keep persecuting Christians, do you think that they would have knocked him in the head with something else?
Well, that's later. Then Saul felt a 2x4 on the back of his head.
I was thinking of a big stick, but 2x4s.
Well, that's a great
Did they
question.
have 2x4s back then?
No.
They were,
I don't think so.
they were what's by what? What was it?
Big
Cubic?
stick.
By-
Cubics,
All right.
by 4 cubics.
Cubic feet. Cubic feet.
Skip
wasn't it?
ahead to Acts 26 then,
Acts 26.
verse 14, which is kind of the same story.
Oh,
Was it?
Jesus.
Acts 26,
Okay.
verse
14.
Yeah.
In Hebrew tongue. Saul, why persecutest thou me? Kick against
So Paul is retelling this story, except he adds a lot more.
goats.
Verse 13, about noon, I was on the road. I saw a light from heaven, brighter than the sun, blazing around me and my companions. Who wrote Acts, by the way? Who wrote the Acts version?
Paul.
oh,
No, Paul did not write Acts.
John,
no,
I thought it was Luke or John.
Luke. Luke wrote Acts.
Luke, I didn't know.
Okay. Verse 14, we all fell to the ground, and I heard a voice saying to me in Aramaic, "Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me? It is hard for you to kick against the
The
goad."
goats.
What is Jesus saying there? What is a goad, first of all?
A sharp stick used to prod.
what? Pride.
Cattle prod.
Prod.
Hmm, okay.
So when he says it's hard to kick against the goads, what's he telling Paul?
He's making it harder on himself by fighting.
By
Mhm.
not going the direction. You're making it harder on yourself, not going the direction I'm trying to lead you. You could still go that way, but you're just going to be bumping your head up, kicking against the goads.
I'm just going to keep getting bigger sticks.
Yeah, I'll get bigger sticks. So, yes, of course, Paul could have said no. I will. But flip back to Acts 9 now, in verse 15. But the Lord said to Ananias, "Go, This man is my what?
I chose the instrument.
Chosen instrument. So, well, I don't know. What do you think? This man is my chosen instrument. I have chosen him. Could Moses have said no?
Oh, yes, he could.
The burning bush.
He had free will.
But God chose him to go. Makes God sound almost like the Godfather. He's got an offer people can't refuse. So, I mean, interesting stuff, certainly. I don't know how we got headed in that direction, but that's interesting stuff.
I don't, my footnote for 15 and 16 says, he promises to be with us through suffering and hardship, not to spare us from it. So is that kind of what you're saying?
That goes back to our original argument.
Mm-hmm.
Look at the end of verse 16. I will show him,
How much?
talking about Paul, how much he must suffer for my name. Now, let's flip over to 2 Corinthians 12. It's First Corinthians. Second.
Well, what verse?
2 Corinthians 12, let's start at, actually, let's start at 11.
Okay.
Talk about some of the suffering that Paul went through. Verse 23. I am more. I have worked much harder, been in prison more frequently, been flogged more severely, been exposed to death again and again. 5 times I received from Jews the 40 lashes minus 1. Why would he say that? 39 was the limit. That's the limit according to Jewish law. 5 times I received from Jews the 40 lashes minus 1. 3 times I was beaten with rods. Once I was stoned. 3 times I was shipwrecked. I spent a night and day in the open sea. I have been constantly on the move, in danger from rivers, bandits, my own countrymen, from Gentiles, in the city, in the country, at sea, from false brothers. I have labored and toiled and have often gone without sleep. I have known hunger and thirst and have often gone without food. I have been cold and naked. Besides everything else, I face daily the pressure of my concern for the churches. Who is weak and I do not feel weak? If this is a job description for what it's like to be a Christian, not sure a whole lot of people would sign up for that.
It's true.
And you've also got to realize this is Paul. Aside from Jesus himself, probably the most faithful and important witness in the history of Christianity. And God allowed all this stuff to happen to him. And at the end of his life, after he got through all of this, what happens to him?
He gets executed.
Mm-hmm.
All the disciples and apostles, with the exception of John, met violent death. Untimely violent. So again, if you're writing up, if you're trying to get people to come join, hey, come join this group. Look what we can promise you. People with rods, lashes, stone. Who would sign up for this?
Mm-hmm.
And this is what, again, kind of makes people look at God and say, you know what, that really doesn't seem fair.
Mm-hmm. Well,
If anybody should have been blessed and received blessings, it was Paul.
You might say we don't see the big picture.
Goes back to what you said at the beginning, that it's a lesson. Now that we can look back on it, it's showing, it's teaching us a lesson.
Then through Paul's suffering,
Like this says, our trials and hurts that we experience for Christ's sake build our character, demonstrate our faith, and prepare us for the further service to the Lord.
okay,
So, but I don't think any of us want to go through it.
there is a point to suffering. There is a reason for it. Because otherwise, to think otherwise is to accept randomness in the universe. Well, it's all a crapshoot. We may not be able to see the purpose. We may not be able to understand the purpose. We certainly may not be able to like it. But at the end of the day, we have to accept it, knowing that eventually God will work through it. Romans 8:28, a very well-known verse.
I think I know this.
Mhm.
Wow.
Work together for the good, and to them that love God, to them to his purpose. Yep.
All right, somebody read that.
And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose.
Okay, so somebody explain to me how it can work for the good of someone who is sick and suffering and going to die an untimely death. We're back to our original argument.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's good.
Okay. While I was hunting and not finding, I found something else. And I don't know if it really has any bearing, but I read it because I had it marked off in my Bible. So it's Corinthians something here, wait. 1:27. But God hath chosen the foolish things of the world to confound the wise, and God hath chosen the weak things of the world to confound the things which are mighty. So is part of all that is confounding us?
Again, it speaks to how God turns everything upside down according to our human thinking. Back in Jesus' day, who were considered the smart guys?
Pharisee.
Pharisees. They are the guys that knew everything. They were the guys that knew the law. Jesus never picked them for his disciples. He picked who?
It's common man.
These uneducated
Shepherds and educated.
fishermen. Why? Because the Pharisees couldn't be used because they thought they knew everything.
Well, we just don't have the capacity in our humanness to understand God's.
And that's the bottom line.
Mhm.
And we run into trouble when we, just like it says in that section in 1 Corinthians, when we start thinking we need no more than God. The hardest thing for anyone to do in this life is to surrender his or her will to God. Because there's that part of us that says, I know best. I know what I want. I know what's good for me. I know more than God. If God only knew my situation, surely wouldn't
I do.
let me go through this. But that idea of surrendering, of giving yourself completely to God, is turning it over to him and say, all right, your will be done. I've tried it my way and I've messed it up. That's what I'm discovering. The wonderful thing about talking to these guys in jail, a lot of them have gotten to that point. You know, I messed my life up, and Lord, I've made a mess of it. They've hit rock bottom.
Mhm.
And now they're willing to say, I got nowhere to go but up. I don't want to screw things up anymore. God, you take over. That's the point we all need to get to, but that's the point so few people really do. Because there's that part of us that wants to be in charge.
Mhm.
Mhm. We still want to have our thumb on it.
Let me ask you this, as faithful Christians, right now, where you are, if you were given a stage 4 cancer diagnosis and the doctor said, we might try some experimental stuff. It would be painful, it would be expensive, not sure if it's going to work. What would you do?
No,
No.
Nothing.
no.
Surrender.
I've seen what it does.
Yeah.
I'd have to try.
I'm sorry, Donna, what did you say?
I would have to try to go through it all.
There are some people that certainly would. There is a very strong instinct of self-preservation in us. We're wired that way. But there's another group that would say, and especially at our age too, there's a part of us that would say, you know what, I'm not bankrupting my family, I'm not putting them through it. I'm at peace with God. If this is his will, I'm ready to go. I don't see there's a problem necessarily with either decision.
Well, there's the quality of life that gets affected when you start doing that. And if it's just experimental and you don't even know for sure, and you know that you're like stage 4, I would say I want to live the rest of my life conscious of the people around me and not play games. It's because it's inevitably going to happen. It's just prolonging it. And I'd rather have the rest of my days cognizant of everything that's going on.
Well, with David,
Yeah.
he knew he was going to die. He did not like it. He hated it, and it infected his last days.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Okay,
they could not cure him. They could hold it at bay for a short time, but he put hope in that, hope beyond what should have been. And so, instead of making peace with God and making peace with the world, he resented everything. So that
I was going to say, this probably sounds like a really dumb question, but what did he hate about it? Was it the pain or the knowledge that his life would be over?
he wanted to live. He wanted to live. He thought it was unfair that he didn't get to live to be 102 because that he had said many times, I want to live to be 102. One of our uncles did, and he thought that he should as well. And up until the time he was diagnosed, he was in good health. Not his whole life, because he had Wegener's at one time, but he beat that, and I guess he wasn't done with this life.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't mind dying. Dying doesn't bother me. It's the pain of dying
Yeah.
that I'm not real wild about, and I'm hoping that I don't have to. I used to suffer from migraine. I figure I paid my dues in pain already. So hopefully that's a true assessment.
It always makes me think of that old Woody Allen joke. I don't mind dying. I just don't want to be there when it happens.
That's what morphine's for.
I think of a guy like Jack Hammerly, who died just a few weeks ago, went to sit in his chair in his living room and wake up. That would be.
I just want to go to sleep and wake up in heaven.
Mm-hmm.
But your brother's reaction is a very common. It's unfair. This isn't fair. And again, this goes back to this whole argument of what's fair and not fair, and our concept of fairness and God's idea of fairness and justice. And
Mhm.
that just brings all that up.
Mhm.
And it's one of those situations where no, I don't like it, I don't want it, but I'd like this cup to pass from me, but not as I will, but as you will. And I think that's the point we're all trying to get to in our faith.
Mhm.
And some people never get there.
Well, you can say you are, but when it comes down to the wire, you can be running scared.
Mhm. Mhm.
I agree with that. I would agree with that.
Yeah.
It would be nice to be surrounded by friends and family, but we don't get that choice.
No.
So we just hold on to the promises. And 1 Corinthians 15, we will be changed in a flash, in the twinkling of an eye. As soon as you close your eyes in death, you'll be standing in the presence of God. And, sorry to say, ladies on the bottom row, at least as I'm looking at you, there's no limbo, there's no purgatory, no waiting room,
No holding pen.
no holding pen.
You're in or you're out.
My Catholic,
Jesus didn't tell the thief on the cross, you'll be with me in paradise, but only after you work off those certain
Yeah.
sins.
I think yesterday when the kids came to school, because I was working with the kindergartners and the teacher, this gave me a reality check. I never felt old until yesterday. The kindergartners are going to graduate in 2034.
Oh, God.
Felt really old. Like I might not even be here.
But that, I mean,
Crazy.
that's just a very excellent point, is that we don't know. We may not even be here tomorrow.
Yeah, that's what he told me.
Yeah.
I'm all depressed. He's like,
Yeah.
you don't know.
Yeah, that sure did, didn't it?
Yeah. That made me feel so much better.
2034, you might not make it till tomorrow. So, I mean, which is just why we need spending our time, our effort, our time, talent, and treasure in trying to advance the gospel. We'll end up Matthew 25. And we don't have to read the whole thing. It's the section that starts at 31, verse 31. Actually, verse 34. Then the king will say to those on his right, come, you who are blessed by my Father, take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. For I was hungry and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger and you invited me in. I needed clothes and you clothed me. I was sick and you looked after me. I was in prison and you came to visit me. They say, when did you do all that stuff? The king will reply, I tell you the truth, whatever you did for the least of these brothers of mine, you did for me. We've only got so many hours, so much time. And what better way to spend it than that? Now, for next week, something to think about anyway.
Oh,
And you can do with this as you will. Someone may come up with something. As you think about your faith and you think about your relationship with Jesus, is your relationship with Jesus based more on a fear of hell or a desire for heaven?
think of hell too often.
All right, no discussion at this point. Everybody understand the question?
yep.
Well, sorry, we'll be in Milwaukee, so somebody take notes.
All right. Going to Milwaukee.
Say
Okay.
hi to the people in Milwaukee.
Okay, will do.